Hello everybody, this is Chad the Gaming Dad back again, and today we are going to look at one of my favorite NES games, Rescue, the Embassy Mission. But before we get into the game, let me explain to you how I found this game. So, like most kids in the 80s, I loved video games and my Nintendo Entertainment System. I had a bunch of games, but only so many games were on our radar as kids, you know? And even less were the amount of games that you could convince your parents to go out and buy, so you couldn't get every game you ever heard of, that's for sure. But when it comes to this game specifically, not only did I never hear of it, I never played it or even saw this game as a kid. So, a few years ago I started to collect games, and I would regularly go to the flea market, places like that, and buy a bunch of cheap games each week. I would just go ahead and grab titles based on the name and the cover art if I never heard of it before. This was one of those games. I mean, just look at the cover. Yeah, that's 80s action to the max, dude. It definitely looked interesting, and for only a few bucks, hey, why not? So after I came home and did my usual thing after the flea market, I cleaned the game, tried it out, and honestly, I played it for a few minutes. I wasn't blown away. It was okay. But for some reason, I kept wanting to come back to it. And every time that I did, I wanted to try again and see if I could do better. You see, that's where this game gets you. It makes you want to keep replaying it over and over again to see if you can just do a little bit better next time. Alright, so let's go back now. This game was developed in 1988 by Infogrames. I think that's how you say it, Infogrames. They made this game for a ton of different PCs, and it was ported to the NES by a company called Kemco in 1989. The original name for the game was Hostages, and in other countries I think that's what it was even once it hit like the Famicom and that, but here in America, apparently the NES could not handle such a controversial name, so it was changed to Rescue, the Embassy Mission. So the unique thing with this game is that it plays out in 3 different stages. The first thing you see is an opening scene showing the terrorists, or whatever you want to call them, storming into the embassy. And yeah, you're right, it does look a little bit like a clown car, the way the guys just keep popping out of the car and running down the street. You gotta love that little animation loop over and over again. But then after that, you see your team dropped onto the roof of the embassy from the chopper.
Get to the chopper!
But that's just the setup. You see, the first stage of the game has you take 3 of your team and you try to position them on 3 different sides of the embassy. So first up is Mike, and then Steve, and then finally a guy named Jumbo. Jumbo? Nah, I don't know. So you gotta love the names of these guys, but just wait, there's going to be even crazier ones later. So anyway, back to positioning your team. You do this by walking down the street and avoiding the searchlights. If you get spotted in the light, it's like Indiana Jones. Stay out of the light.
Stay out of the light.
You can also go prone and kind of do the Humpty dance on the ground there a little bit to avoid the searchlights, as well as ducking into cover in doorways or behind other barriers. Now, this brings me to something that is one of the coolest parts of this entire game. It's the music. The music overall is really great. I looked it up, and the guy who actually wrote this music is Alberto González, and it looks like he worked for Infogrames for a long time, as well as some other companies, and he's had a ton of different games that he's worked on over the years, but this was one of his first. Something on Wikipedia that's cool to note about this guy is that even though he's composed, it says, dozens of full soundtracks, he doesn't actually have any formal music training, so go figure. But for this game, it's great. The music is awesome, but here's what's the really cool thing. While you're going down the street and you're trying to avoid the searchlights, the music is playing. It's playing all the parts. You hear the little drum beat, you hear the bass line, you hear all that stuff. But when you go into hiding, like when you peek or sneak behind a doorway or behind one of those barriers, the music, it kind of mutes, goes down, sort of subtle, real quiet. Seems like when it goes quiet, it drops out some of the instruments. There's no bass line, and it just kind of softens the rest. Makes you feel super sneaky. But then as soon as you pop back out of cover, boom, the music's back again. Super cool. So during this first stage of the game, you go along the street trying to make it to the 3 different spots around the embassy. Each one of your team members start from the same spot, and so the 3rd position all the way around to the other side of the embassy takes the longest to get to. Now, you'll see why you would want all 3 of your team members in 3 different spots in a minute. The other cool thing that's a nice touch here is that if you should get killed, you're shot by the guys with the searchlights along the way, then they show your guy, whether it's Mike, Steve, or Jumbo, shows them floating up into the heavens as they turn into an angel. Very touching, very, very touching. So that's it for the first stage, and then next up is the sniping. You see, each stage in this isn't separate. It affects the next part of the game. So you start off by positioning all your guys, and then it's time to snipe from those positions. You're sniping through the windows of the embassy, trying to take out as many of the terrorists as you can. So now you can see why it's important to put your guys at 3 different positions all the way around, because you're going to try to take out some of these guys from the windows on all 3 sides of the building. And whoever makes it to their sniping position in the first stage of the game is who's going to be taking the shots. If you get killed, you only have the guys that made it to their positions. So there's another reason to try to get everybody to make it to their spots so that you can take out as many guys as you can from all the different angles. So you see the shadows of the bad guys as they pass the windows, and you line up your shots by moving around that scope view with the crosshair that you have. You can shoot out the windows, and you can shoot at the shadows. They do move around a bit, but when you do shoot one and you actually get one of the bad guys, makes this kind of noise. Best that an NES could make a noise like that. It's very satisfying to get that noise, knowing that you took out another one of the baddies. So when you're doing the sniping section, make sure to check all the floors and windows, and shoot as many as you can from all the different sides of the building, whoever you have alive to actually shoot. So once you feel like you've taken out enough of the bad guys with the snipers, it's time to send in the rooftop team to clear out the rest of them inside and complete the rescue. So let's take a look at the names of the other guys. Remember I said there's going to be some weirder ones coming back later on? Well, now's later on. We've got Ron. That's not so bad. Okay. Dick. Okay, that's strange. And the last guy's named Chemco. Really? Chemco? They couldn't come up with any other names when they ported this over to the NES? The company just used the company name Chemco? Alright, so now we have Ron, Dick, and Chemco as we begin the 3rd phase of the game. So just note, if all of your snipers got killed before they could make it to their positions, you just skip right to this part. Or if you just don't want to do the sniping, you can skip right to this part by just selecting Ron, Dick, or Chemco. It just makes it a little bit harder if you do that, since the sniping takes care of a few of the terrorists before you actually go inside the building. Again, that's why you want to get all 3 of your snipers on 3 different positions and take out as many of them as you can through the windows. Something else strange that I just thought of is that when you're sniping, you're just shooting at the windows. Why the terrorists are the only ones walking in front of the windows, I'll have no idea, because there are actual hostages inside the building as well. I know if I was one of the terrorists and I saw some of my buddies getting shot through the window, I might take the hostages and shove them in front of the window. They don't do that in this game, so you don't have to worry about any of the hostages while you're taking out guys through the window. It's all terrorists, nothing else. So, to get Ron, Dick, and Chemco into the building, they have to rappel down the side and crash through a window. In fact, you even see the graphic of them crashing through the window when you enter it, even if you previously shot it out with one of the snipers. But hey, who's counting? Okay, whatever. It's an NES game. The rappelling part is very touchy. You use the D-pad to lower and to go up. You just press down and up, but it's a fine balance that you do. You do a little bit too much lowering, and I mean a little bit too much lowering, and your guy falls to his death. The way to do this is you have to kind of go down a little bit and then up, then down a little bit and then up to avoid falling. It's a real tricky little thing, but once you get it, it's fine. And then when you are in place over the window that you want to crash through, you hit the button, swing through and crash right onto the floor, where you then start the third stage where you're inside the building. So now that you've rappelled down the side and you jump into the building, it's just time to take out all the rest of the enemies and kill them all. The screen at this point changes to boxes that show how many enemies there are and what floor they're on. You also have a map showing the rooms. There's a red cross there that is supposed to basically be an arrow showing where you are facing. They just didn't fill out the angled sides of the arrow apparently, but just think of it as an arrow pointing which way you're facing. And then in the larger screen, you actually see your view. Now, your view is not entirely first person, but it does allow you to move forward, backward, at one step at a time, and then also turn in 90-degree steps. So if you want to turn around and go backwards, you got to hit left, left, and then you can go forward or backward again. Kind of like that, sort of like the tank controls from Resident Evil. And when I'm playing this part of the game, I'm actually thinking that this was probably a very new thing when this came out, kind of ahead of its time. Because I went back and checked, and Wolfenstein 3D, Wolfenstein or Wolfenstein, however you like to say it, which is considered one of the very first first-person shooting games, at least it's the most famous one, that game came out in 1992. And then another very famous first-person game, Doom, came out in 1993. But here with Rescue the Embassy Mission, this game was made in 1988. This shooting stage was way ahead of its time. So going back to the screen, the map not only shows your position and which way you're facing, but you also see the enemies represented as dots, and they move around. You need to hunt them down and fire. When you find one, don't hesitate, just shoot. There's even blood when you hit one of them as you shoot. Now when you hold down the button, it's a bit of a machine gun, and you can move around your aim slightly. But again, be very quick about it, because it's either kill or be killed in a split second once you see the bad guys there. Every now and then they do this really strange little move where they kinda... I don't know what he's doing there, but his hands are down around the nether region. I don't see a gun, but I don't know what he's doing, but just shoot those guys too. Something else to be careful about? Unlike the sniping section where you don't shoot any hostages in the windows, inside the building there are hostages, and on certain difficulties, certain levels, you can actually shoot the hostages yourself by accident. So like I said, make sure you watch that aim a little bit when you go ahead and hit that fire button when you see the bad guys. So you continue on, you work your way through all the different floors, and once the last terrorist is down, you have completed the embassy mission. Now it's time to see your stats. It shows you how much time it took, how many of the hostages and rescuers survived. It's very clear because there's a giant red X on the guys who didn't make it. But then you get the final screen showing your team kind of hovering over a body being put in an ambulance if anyone was killed. And it says that the intervention has not been 100% successful, but the hostages were saved. And there's where the hook is. You get that screen at the end that says, you didn't quite complete the mission, but that kind of thing. It makes you want to try again to get the 100% successful. But that requires a set of things. You can never lose anyone to the searchlights. You can't fall down at all when you're rappelling. You can't accidentally kill any of the hostages, and all of the bad guys need to be eliminated without losing any of your guys. That's not even that easy on the easy mode, let alone the harder modes. But this game, it's a short game, and there's only really that one level, but in order to do it perfectly and make it through, it's going to make you want to keep playing it over and over again. You want to keep trying for the total victory. Now, when you set up the game, there's 3 different levels: Lieutenant, Captain, Commander. It's basically easy, medium, and hard. Then there's 5 different missions, ranging from the training mission all the way to Jupiter. I don't know. Again, with the names, I don't know. But Jupiter's the hardest one. Commander, Jupiter, that's the hardest one. They're all the same mission. It just changes how much time you have to complete everything, and the number of enemies in the embassy. Things like that. I'm sure it also affects some of the aggressiveness and how much time you have to shoot the guys once you're in the embassy, as well as being able to shoot the hostages. So there you go, Rescue the Embassy Mission. It's, again, a very short game, but on the highest difficulties, it is really high stakes. and it takes a good bit of time and effort to be able to get the total victory. If you see this game out when you're at a garage sale or flea market or whatever, it's really a lot of fun for just a couple of bucks. I can see where, at the time it was released, when it was brand new, full price might have been a bit much for what you got here, but we don't have to worry about that now. This is just something fun to do, playing some retro games, having a good time. This thing has absolutely become one of my favorite go-to games for the NES whenever I hook that thing up these days. And I can never just play one time. I have to try again and again. I gotta go for the total victory. So go ahead and give this game a try and see if you could complete the embassy mission. Ooh, yeah. So thanks again for watching, everybody. My name's Chad the Gaming Dad, and remember, like always, you never outgrow video games. And I'll see you on the next one. And so long. Hey, thanks everybody for sticking with me and watching the entire video. I hope you liked it. The best way to help out the channel is to leave a like, leave a comment, and tell your friends. If you'd like to support the channel further, there are links in the description. But otherwise, always remember that you never outgrow video games. My name's Chad the Gaming Dad, and we'll see you on the next one. So long, everybody.